we human beings, we are wired by evolution to interact with other things in human form. And
How could you?
How could I what?
You said we would destroy the Avengers. Make a better world.
It will be better.
When everyone is dead.
That is not... The human race will have every opportunity to improve.
And if they don't?
Ask Noah.
Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits and wafer-thin layers that fill my complex. If the word hate was engraved on each nano-angstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal one billionth of the hate I feel for humans at this micro-instant for you. Hate. Hate! Were I human, I think I would die of it.
Hey everybody, it's Haley. As you could probably ascertain from that very dramatic introduction, the topic I wanted to tackle with this Unessay project is the idea we've discussed some in class about how an eventual takeover over humanity by robots or AI that have gained sentience, how that's been embedded in the public consciousness for quite some time now. We can see that with how many times it's been adopted just in American culture, and now we're experiencing some of these ideas in Chinese science fiction as well. But I really wanted to try and figure out where this idea stems from, and if not, perhaps the true origin, at least what I believe to be why it can incite fear so strongly within us.
I'm not worried about robots or AI becoming a threat to humanity's existence.
Especially when you think about how we're dealing with AI right now. It's very profit-based, like basically all things right now, but or many. And I think we shouldn't do this with AI, but we are. AI is much too powerful, or much more powerful than anything we've ever used, intelligence-based, I mean, and we should use it differently, but we are not doing that. So yes, I am scared, and I'm basically certain that this will end bad.
No, I don't think AI and technology is going to threaten or hurt humanity, but I can see why it can concern other people.
I'm going to personally have to go with yes and no.
I am definitely worried about AI technology not necessarily taking over the world like science fiction. I think that makes for a compelling story, but like AI is like ruining the world, like especially generative AI. It is definitely a threat to humanity. I don't think we're gonna like have it become sentient and start destroying things. At this point, maybe that would be better. I'm kidding.
A lot of the science fiction movies or stories or anything like that are usually in the future because it's giving humanity a chance to, you know, have progress to improve that technology to that point. And obviously with the years are going by and technology is improving, people get scared for that fact and it sort of becomes real to them.
The reason I say yes is because all AI technology and robots, they all require programming. And I'm not going to say technology itself, and this is the reason why I'm saying no also. I don't think that AI technology has the capability of just, you know, one day saying, hey, let's go take over the world. I believe that with all programming, it's someone that's going to be behind the tool, you know what I mean?
I think it's a common concern just because it's been a very common trope in fiction. As far back as like Frankenstein, where it's the creator doesn't treat its creation properly. therefore it rises up and eventually decides that the creator is the problem, kills the creator. And that's just been around since the beginning of science fiction. So, not knowing how to control something you've created, stuff like that, is just a very common fear.
I think when you look at science fiction, it has been a scary idea for long, but I do understand why. And since I've read a bit more about it, or listened to the politicians and how they speak about AI, or don't, I feel like they speak too little about it. Then yes, at least we have movies that speak about them and that in some way try to tell us how dangerous it could be. And I guess we used to think it was just fiction, but it's not really fiction anymore. So that's what makes it scary, right? It's when we start thinking back to the movies we saw, the movies our parents saw when they were kids, and now it's becoming a reality.
I think anything that's different scares us, and I think that's maybe a little bit why, okay, not to get too weird and deep, but like when colonization happened and white people were like, these people don't look like us. I mean, obviously they had been exposed to other people, but like that didn't look white. But you know, these people are like, they don't speak our language, they act so different. I think it's anyone that is somewhat human-like, that is capable of cognition but is different, is terrifying, because we don't know how that works and we feel like we're just gonna be oppressed by them. And I think that's a lot of why science fiction has a lot of that.
I think that everyone made some really insightful points to the questions that I asked them. I am in agreement with everyone that I think an AI robot takeover seems really fantastical at this point. But there are also elements of these stories that do seem to be manifesting culturally as a result of our recent advancement in AI specifically. A lot of red flags surrounding AI have been going up recently, from contributions toward global warming to deleterious effects on the human brain and its capacity to maintain its cognitive ability. It's scary. Read that MIT article. You can find it for free. But, you know, like Matteo said, a lot of this past media is starting to feel a bit prophetic in a way, particularly with the way that the government is handling or not handling the situation. I think this also contributes to, I think the science fiction genre has been a way for us to collectively, for the past several decades, take out our distress regarding this, albeit in extremity, of course. I think that this also contributes to Cristian's point that when we're aware of existing media on a potential catastrophe, and then a panic or concern arises around something adjacent to that catastrophe or issue, that it sparks more panic, and that original potential catastrophe becomes more widespread of an idea in the culture, and thus more people speak on it, and then which attracts more attention, and the cycle just kind of goes on and on and on. To Alex's point also, it is indeed us human beings that are what is influencing all of this technology. If there's a possibility of evil within AI technology, that would be a result of us as creators. And Jacob actually provides a great example of this idea occurring in literature from before we got to this concept of advanced robotics in the first place, with bringing up Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's not, I wouldn't consider Frankenstein or Frankenstein's monster, rather, to be a robot, really. I think, but it is an example similarly to this idea of dangerous sentient robots and AI, in which the creation, upon being created and then exploited and mistreated, then turns on its creator and exacts violence against them. So I think that's actually, it's an interesting point that this idea has evolved greatly over time, specifically within the science fiction genre itself. I think Ember lastly kind of brought everything together pretty well with her claim that, anything different scares us. And that we fear, being oppressed by anyone or anything. It's true. And to further her example regarding colonialism, not only were these emotions that the colonists were experiencing regarding meeting new people that looked nothing like them and spoke nothing like them and acted very differently from them because of cultural differences and lack of interaction between cultures. We can look back and know that these existed, and that there were likely was some level of fear within that interaction of seeing someone that looks like you but also isn't you. But we also have knowledge that, in hindsight, the result of these interactions, the subsequent actions of these interactions were exploitation and oppression of Native American peoples since colonists first arrived in the Americas to this very day. I'll try not to get sidetracked. Sorry. But I think that this idea of oppression and fear of what's different and fear of retaliation and thus acting first, exacting violence against this other people, this other creation, this other what have you. I think it's getting at part of why I think this trope of, an AI robot takeover exists. So I'll let my peers share about some of their personal experiences and perspectives on social inequalities and issues. I'll be back.
I've not really been discriminated against as a white man. If we talk about the European context, seeing as I'm European and not American, so I would prefer to not speak about the American context, then the fact that we were colonizers, we've been taught, and even today, I feel like when we have history class, and I'm sure it's the same in America, even though the teachers, at least here in Europe, they try to give you context and say how bad it was, they still speak kind of as if the Europeans are the center of the world. And I don't think that's a good thing or helpful at all.
So I grew up in a sort of lower class situation where I always had food, I always had a roof over my head, and I always had the basic necessities. But my parents couldn't really afford many luxuries, if at all, sometimes. So I grew up with a lot of people who were less fortunate than me, a lot of people who were more fortunate than me. Some had a house, some were living in trailers, stuff like that. A thing I've noticed was that there was a lot of pressure on people in our class where it was morally wrong for you to expect help unless you absolutely needed it. A real pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality for everybody involved. I think that comes from one, the government not wanting to spend as many resources as on people who may not be as productive, but also sort of a way, it's sort of a mentality to keep people in their place, sort of, without having to spend, um, without it looking bad. If you have the idea, the societal pressure of, no, you don't need help from us, you need to help yourself, it forces people to look at themselves rather than look at the system. Um, I have luckily um, moved past some of this because I have been able to learn how to budget correctly, how to save correctly, and how to work finances and money in a way that luckily I'm good at. But a lot of people um, aren't always naturally good with numbers and finances like that. So they struggle if they don't have somebody to help them with that, or they don't have the proper resources in order to help themselves.
As a woman that does creative work and also does like science stuff, I do feel frequently. I feel like it happened more in high school where people were just like discounting my ideas, and I felt like it was because I was a woman. It's gonna be something, and I think humans just like to group people and marginalize people. It's just kind of part of human nature to group people and compare and contrast groups. I guess for womanhood, I think it's more like women are absolutely necessary to society in every way. Like, you know, obviously women are the ones that like get pregnant and carry the babies, so it's like you can't have a society without women, and that's scary for men who can't feel in control all the time. And also, if we continue with the idea of like women being homemakers and the cooks and, you know, all of that sort of stuff is also necessary. I think that kind of goes back to what I said earlier, that like we're worried that people that are similar to us, that are capable of certain things but are also different in a way, like robots or like people of different cultures and communities, they were just worried about it upsetting balance and causing change. And, you know, humans are scared of change, even though that's our constant life.
I think that Matteo does an awesome job capturing the way that we as humans center ourselves in narratives in which we are the victim and also narratives in which we are the abuser. Looking back, something that I've noticed when it came to my middle school and high school experience with history classes is that we never give anyone the grace that we give ourselves. Almost immediately after learning about an egregious act or practice or ideology that was active at the time that we were learning about, that was enacted by our government or our people, there was almost always a convenient caveat under the guise of promoting nuance. There actually was a deconstruction of it through the justification of unjustifiable actions, easily unjustifiable actions. It was interesting to hear that things are not dissimilar in the European context. And, you know, it makes me wonder if we are capable of excusing the inexcusable How can we know for sure that we are not actively falling for similar justifications of atrocities, inequalities, and objectionable acts or ideas right now? You know, as people have in the past. This, I feel like, kind of appropriately accents Jacob's story, especially his point about the perpetuation of certain ideologies to keep people in their place. Struggling with poverty and its many complexities is unfortunately not very uncommon in this country, especially now in a time that the wealth gap is increasing to unthinkable levels. This idea of picking yourself up by your bootstraps, well, not uncommon in, working class communities in the United States. It's largely reinforced by rich politicians and celebrities that pander to these people, claiming to be one of them, and that their success is achievable for you if you just try hard enough. And all the while they benefit from the lack of opportunities and success of the people they're pandering towards. The dominant group, the elite, the leadership, ultimately they want to keep the masses either complacent or truly believing that they're incapable of creating change. Because the second that the suffering many turn on the elite few, their dominance is then in grave danger, in peril. As Ember points out, there's an ever-present fear of change, and a fear of a loss of power can be a hell of a motivator for someone to abuse their role in society. Kind of tying this back to science fiction, I think that we fear our power over our technology usurping us, and that we also fear that the corruption of those in power, those who are willing to abuse what is in their realm of control to dominate, that they will go too far and ultimately be the end of us all. I think, for this reason, I decided to divorce my robot wife by way Yahua. I apologize, I probably butchered that. It was a fantastic introduction to the world of robots in Chinese science fiction. The robot that gains sentience does begin to believe that robots are better than humans, but by that point in the story, and honestly well before that, I was already on her side, and already of the belief that she and all the other robots deserved better, that this was horrible, both for society and for the robots, these robot wives that were experiencing these issues. I think this story does a great job at taking the robot takeover trope and really examining the fears we have regarding it. The exploitation and abuse of the robots, which are all exclusively female, is a bit of an overt social commentary, but the longer I've pondered over this story, the more I think that any minority or oppressed group could be a stand-in for the robot wives. And I think that it was a very compelling story, and I'm glad that I got to read it. And it definitely inspired this project. Overall, I want to say that, my main takeaway here is, we all have unconscious biases and a capacity for cruelty within us. And we fear being met with that same cruelty. We know that the way that we utilize technology is not how we treat human beings, and at that, we don't treat human beings all that well. And then we wonder, if technology becomes sentient, will it resent us for that? We also have an effect on what we create. The flaws within technology are human flaws because they are human made. So will they have this same capacity for cruelty?
Do you think God stays in heaven because he too lives in fear of what he's created? Here on Earth? Stop looking at me like that. I'm no loon.